Mhm.
Our accountants have been updating us with different types of programs, and I've been applying for stuff and getting not approved because we're not qualifying. But you got to go out there and see what's available for you, so you can at least have your plan in place when a bill comes up and maybe you can't afford it, maybe you can't. But uh, the only thing that has to be paid is the mortgage. Personally at Toro, we've deferred all asset management. Obviously, that goes without saying. But we've put a pause on that. We even spoke to our managers about potentially deferring some management fees.
Mhm.
But for the most part, the number one thing that I said to everybody was mortgage, mortgage, mortgage. We'll figure it out after that.
Yeah. No, I think it's important, right? Mortgage obviously has, you know, essentially a lien on the property if you don't pay. So that's got to be covered. And then I think, utilities, everybody needs that. Like you said, I think a lot of places are going to start deferring that stuff too, like New York. I think, so like Raleigh did it as well. I'm sure some other places in the Carolinas have. I'm sure at some point, if it gets similar to New York everywhere else, that'll be one of the things, they just start deferring. So, those are some things you can put on the back burner. I think, you can start deferring things like, landscaping, right? Switch it from every 2 weeks to every 4 weeks, right? I don't think a tenant's going to complain for 3 months if their grass is a little long, right? Like, marketing, maybe you can
Yep.
scale down that, so, CapEx reserves and things like that. You don't necessarily have to spend, right? Fix the black appliance instead of replacing it, things like that. So I think there's a lot of things you just, like you said, got to prioritize what's the most important, see what you can work out, and, just kind of work backwards.
Exactly.
Um, so that's all it is. I think last question we have, and then we'll kind of wrap it up, was what are we going to do going forward for new deals? So like what assumptions are we going to do for underwriting? How are we going to look at rent growth, vacancies, reserves? And I'm going to break this up again into short term and long term again, because I think it's going to be two very different things.
Yes, I think the immediate thing that my reserve on new deals is, and I, Chris handles a lot of the acquisitions, and the immediate thing is if we found a really good deal today, unfortunately, I can't go look at it, right?
Yeah.
The one thing that we would never do is buy a deal we haven't seen. So right now for new deals, sourcing new deals, my immediate fear is on the bad debt and the tenants. I'm looking at every deal right now as whatever's in bad debt is being 100% written off
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
the eviction costs are basically on pause.
Hmm.
So what do you think is going to happen when they get back in action? The backlog is going to be out of control.
For sure.
So if you look at that tenant ledger and you see a tenant that has historically paid day in and day out and they went delinquent because of this, well, one, look at where they work and what they do and say, okay, this tenant, once they get back on their feet, you're not going to have a problem. If you look at a tenant that has historically been late, maybe their job's more, you know, not secure, that's something you want to consider going forward with the eviction on that guy. But you're going to have to be flexible there. So I think in the immediate future, any deal I'm looking at, I'm looking at the bad debt and really understanding the bad debt.
Hmm.
I got off the phone earlier with someone else and I, said new deals right now, opportunistically, if a deal came across my desk that I could act fast on, I would, within reason. I can't get on a plane and fly somewhere, but I do have contacts throughout the country. So I would use my resources. A good deal is a good deal, as I said earlier, but I do think that really paying attention to submarkets is going to
Hmm.
be more important over the next 12 months. Um, as we go a little bit longer looking, I think this goes into one of those situations that, if it gets bad, there's nobody, maybe Bill Gates, but other than him, nobody saw this coming, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I don't care any sponsor out there, any owner, any investor, they could say they've been sitting on the sidelines because they think something's going to happen. They did not think there was going to be a, virus pandemic, right? That, I'm sorry, it's just, I don't believe someone out there, was saying, oh, I'm not buying multifamily because nobody's going to pay their rents when the coronavirus hits the United States. So I think that in the immediate future, you want to understand your bad debt. You got to remember market fundamentals are still strong. So vacancy is vacancy. Rent growth is rent growth. Job growth is job growth. That stuff is factual.
Hmm.
Um, there will be job growth. Jobs will come back after this. So I think, good markets are good markets. The one number you just want to understand is bad debt. Was it bad debt because it was a tenant that was going to go bad? Or is it bad debt because, the guy was a waitress or the girl was a waitress and they couldn't afford it, right? That's a different type of bad debt. So I think the immediate concern is bad debt. I think the longer term concern is location, and you want to be fundamentally strong. But I think the one biggest thing and we've been doing it for 12 months, why we haven't bought a lot of deals or why we're not competitive in the Carolinas as we used to be. Um, even in the office, I'm the one that says, 6 cap, use a 6.25. Am I going to say I'm adding 50 basis points to our cap rates on sale? Absolutely not. But just be aware. I mean, we've seen deals where people are literally selling them at sub 6 caps in 6 years. I think it's fucking
I
crazy.
started seeing it at sub 5 caps. Remember,
Yeah.
there was the one or two we saw right before this happened. I was like,
Yep.
that's new.
Yeah. Those deals only work with interest rate help. So I think you just want to stress, we're still going to use the same metrics we've used always, but you're going to put a little added weight on stress test. I think the perfect example is a deal we're buying next Monday. It's a deal that, it's been going on since October. It's a loan assumption. We have I've stress tested the deal up to a 7 cap, a 7.5 cap, I think, in Jacksonville. And, I think at a 7.5 cap, it's still like a like a high single digit IRR, like a 9 or an 8, or and the cash flow is still solid. So I think that, and it's fundamentally rock solid. It's in a great location in Jacksonville. I think that the rents are low, so tenants, it is what it is. But it's a deal that I truly believe in. We were on a call earlier, internally at Toro, earlier before today, this morning, and I said, if I had the money, I wouldn't even offer it up to investors, because
Mhm.
I think as far as security and what it is, that's it. You just want a really solid location, fundamentally sound deal that's got a stress test, oh shit scenario that still supports itself. And that's sort of how I'm looking at the immediate, the moderate, and the longer term.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of it. I think paying attention to why people went delinquent in this, 3-month window, let's call it, is going to be very important over the next 6 to 12 months. I do think it's going to be tough to find deal flow inside the next 3 months because, like you said, it's for us to buy a deal without going to see it prior to and relying on somebody else to go see it. It's got to be, it's got to be a pretty good deal. We've got to feel pretty confident. It's got to be an area we know and really well too. So there's only so many places it can be. It's not going to be like in Atlanta, for example, because we don't own anything there. You were invested in one deal there. So it's not going to be anything we look to take down because we can't go see it. So I think that is definitely going to play out. I think long term, one of the plays I still liked, and we looked at several of those before this kind of happened, was doing more loan assumption deals. Really good submarkets where, because interest rates 2 to 4 years ago were mid 4s to high 4s. You're going to buy stuff in high 5 caps or low 6 caps, and it's going to be really well preserved from that side because you don't have to underwrite to a 5 cap in 7 years. You can underwrite to 6.5 cap, and they'll still make a 12, a 14, 16 maybe if it's a good buy. And your debt's going to be fixed. It's going to be 70%, 4.5%, fixed interest rate for the next 5, 7, 8 years, whatever it may be. So I think short term, I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Because we're not going to be sure what the debt world's going to look like over the next 6 months. Our spreads are going to come back down. Our interest rate's going to come back down. Are they going to do interest rate hikes once this kind of all comes out with the Fed? So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think one thing we'll continue to do that we've been doing for the last 12 months is jacking up our below the line CapEx. Everybody says do, $250 or $300 a unit. We've been doing $500-600 on almost all our deals. Maybe not in the first year, but in the second, third, or fourth year is when we'll start. So I think that was something that I really liked that we've been doing. So I think we'll probably continue to do it. I think like you said, stress test, because if the market corrects and comes back to close to where we were, your vacancy is not going to be 10%. So if you underwrite the 10% vacancy in a 5% market, you're not going to buy anything, or you're going to be wrong somewhere else. If bad debt in the market is 1%, you underwrite the 10, you're just not going to buy anything, or you're going to have to find the perfect deal of all time, and you're just buying it for way under market value, and you're not going to own it for 7 years because you're going to flip out of it. So I think as long as you can stress test and understand what the downside is, what's your break even occupancy, what is your debt service coverage ratio, what does it look like if you stop, market growth increase on rents and expense growth and things like that. What does it look like at an eight cap? As long as you can understand that and feel comfortable with it, I think there's only so much you can do